Adam and his wife will have a new son, what we call in French, I don't know if the expression exists elsewhere, a replacement son, which is not such a nice expression. And the son is Seth, you know. And it is said, it's Genesis 5, verse 3, that Adam had this son in his likeness, after his image. The prepositions of Genesis 1 are reversed, but the words are the same, as if the text suggests that in image and likeness there is something connected to a father and his sons and his children. And when you come back to Genesis 1, after having read Genesis 5, there is a kind of new context for these words. Maybe to create human as his likeness, in his image and his likeness is the image of God and the likeness of God. It's connected to the idea of a God Father who creates not as how do you say that in English? Artisan, a man who is doing things like a butcher or a baker or artisan. The word is the same. They drop everything. Thank you. Like an artisan out of his work, but there is a much deeper connection between the God and his creatures. And you know, it's very important when you read the Bible, when you read a book, we all know that, to have this memory. I have heard something, a word, an expression, and I have to wait a little bit to find again this expression, and retrospectively, does it exist? It exists. You understand better what you have read first, and reading is always coming back to the beginning, always. You know, if you read a biblical text, sometimes it was through light at the beginning of these first chapters. So there is, when I speak of image and likeness, this shows how mysterious is this new adventure that we do not understand totally from the beginning. Who are these humans? Male and female will become woman and man who have to live in communion each to each other, and maybe with God, because they are in his image and after his likeness. And many questions are raised here. It's often what I say to the students, if after a year of biblical course you have more questions at the end than at the beginning, it's done. I won. So, I could say much more thing about that, but I would like to travel a little bit in the Bible. I have forgotten to speak about one great notion that we will find again in all the Bible up to the New Testament, is the first words that God says to this human, you know, in Genesis 1, verse 28. Yes, I would like to say a little bit about this word. This first word is be fruitful and increase. Be fruitful. It's an excellent translation. In Hebrew, it is peru urubu. Peru is the verb which is connected to peri, which means fruit. So you have to fructify Does it exist in English, fructify? Yes. Okay. All exist. And it's very important because it's the first word which is sent to this new humanity, to this man and this woman, to this male and this female. Be fruitful. We sometimes think that this word means you have children, but it's maybe the second term, increase. Maybe it's this word. Be fruitful is an image to bear fruit like the trees. Where have we seen trees in the Bible in Genesis 1 before? In the verse 11 and the following verses, when God, during the third day of creation, created the fruit trees, which are called to bear fruit. You remember that. That means that there is an image, and an image is always more, is always richer, is always larger than just a concept. God does not say, have children and get them baptized and fulfill the earth with little baptized kids. No, he said, be fruitful, bear fruit. What are the fruits? The fruit, well, read again this verse 11 of Genesis. May the earth let grow fruit trees, and it was such. Fruit trees needs earth to be fruitful. Human being to be fruitful, it's the same word, needs earth. What is the earth of the human being? Isn't it? And when I say that, it's not because it's too rapidly. We should, in fact, read the text more carefully, but I give a kind of conclusion. The earth of the human being, which allows them to be fruitful, to bear fruit, isn't it God Himself? And I think that in this image gives a new understanding of the relation between these human beings and God. The human beings are rooted, deeply rooted in God Himself to become fruitful themselves. Being fruitful is not a human job that you can do by yourself. Look at a tree. A tree is rooted in the earth. It needs the skies, the wind, the rain, and it's very mysterious what happens in a tree, so that in autumn it gives fruit. It's the same thing, so to say, for human being. Human being needs to be rooted in God and with this mysterious connection with Him, with mysterious inner life. They will bear fruit. What kind of fruit? Every fruit you can think about. Have children, and you know in chapter 30 of Genesis, for the first time, a child is announced by the word fruit. You call fruit in the Bible every reality which is produced by the collaboration of God and human beings. What you do when you are rooted in God, it's a fruit. It may be a child, and for example, in chapter 30 of Genesis is Rahel, who has who cannot, who is barren, who cannot give birth to children, and her husband says, well, I'm not in the place of God, who has refused you to be fruitful. And when you read the story along, you'll see that in Genesis 30, verse 22, God remembered Rahel and she gave birth to a son. He was called first by his father, Jacob, a fruit. And the expression, the fruit of the belly, to designate, to define a child given by God, will be an expression very known, especially in Deuteronomy, but in other biblical texts. And when we hear this word, this expression in the mouth of Elizabeth, welcoming Mary, blessed be the fruit of your belly, this expression has an old tradition in the Old Testament, and it expresses, in the case of Mary, so in the first chapter of the Gospel of Luke, what happened. It's a very strong connection between God and a human being, between Mary and God. What is produced when you are united to God to produce something, what is produced is called fruit. Blessed be the fruit of your Mary, is the fruitful woman that God has hinted at the very beginning. Be fruitful. So you see that all this expression of the beginning to speak of the human beings, of the woman especially, are very important, and they will be developed during in all these the texts in Genesis and in the books of the Bible. And so I would like to give some example. Maybe I will continue this afternoon to develop this example. But I gave one example in Genesis 30, the barren woman Rahel, who gives birth to a child, and it was absolutely impossible. And you know how it's very interesting. I would like to say a word about that. In Genesis 30, it's verse 22 to 24. When Rahel gives birth to his son, it's Joseph, you know, and she says two things. I don't know in English, the English traditional translation for this word. But she says, when she gives birth to Joseph, God has taken away my shame, first thing, and may God add another son, and it's for me wonderful. Rachel has understood two main things. The only one, and especially for a woman, who can take away the shame is not a man, is not a human being, it's God. And second thing, the God who gave life when life was impossible, the belly of a barren woman, the God who gave life once will give more life. A son is the prophecy, the announcement of another son, and Rachel has understood that. And it's a kind of structure. It's not a structure because structures you don't move. A dynamism, something like that you will find in all the Bible. Think again to the beginning of Luke, the Gospel of Luke. You are waiting Jesus. Well, you know it's Christmas. The Son of Mary will be born and so on. Okay, you expect Jesus, but another guy is born before. It's John the Baptist. You expected one guy, one baby, two babies. Well, and you know what says Elizabeth, the barren woman, when she perceives that she is pregnant, she says, God has taken away my shame. It's Luke 1:25. And what is the verse after? Luke 1:26. The angel of God was sent to a virgin promised to a man in a city of Galilee. A second child. Well, Rachel is always active. What she said is always true. A baby is the announcement, the prophecy of another, which will be Jesus himself, and you will find that in all the Gospels. Think to John, the Gospel of John, chapter 19. 19, it's the crucifixion of Jesus. Mary is at the foot, of Jesus on the cross, and for human eyes, you see a woman who has a single son, and this single son dies. In the light of God that the Gospel of John gives to his reader, Jesus is passing to this world, from this world to the Father, so he's not dying, he's going to the Father. And what does he say, Jesus, to his mother? The very word of Rachel. You have another son. And he shows the disciples that he loved, who is besides Mary. And so, in the light of God, it's a woman with two sons. First one, who is the announcement, who shows another son, a son of God, of course, and Mary knows how to do, to make of a man a son of God. She was educated for that. And it's good to pray so that she act for us. It's this dynamism of the life of God that Rachel said, the fruitful woman who gave birth to a fruit received from God, Joseph, who is, the word Joseph means in Hebrew, may he had. He is God, of course. So, I would like to give an example, but maybe just a few words, and we'll continue this afternoon. Speaking of the beginning, I said at the beginning, precisely, of my topics, of my paper, that I will speak first of the beginning of the biblical books. Beginning of Genesis, we said some words about that. Beginning of Exodus. You remember the beginning of Exodus. There is first verses about all the posterity of Jacob that came in Egypt to join Joseph. You remember that? And after that, it is said, it's a famous verse, there was on the throne, came on the throne a Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who didn't know Joseph, who hadn't known him. And this new king of Egypt saw this Hebrew having children, becoming fruitful, receiving children from God, and is very angry and fearful. He says, well, this minority, this ethnic minority, they become stronger and stronger, and you know that he gives to the Hebrew more and more work so that they die of work. It's almost my case during this month. And after, as if it was not enough, he proposes this terrible law, and he says that to the midwives, when you help the women of the Hebrew to deliver their babies, you must kill the babies if they are male, if they are boys. If they are girls, they will be married to Egyptian, and the people will disappear. So he asked to the midwives to kill the boys. Remember that. And you know what the midwives do. They say to Pharaoh that they don't accept that, and they help the women of the Hebrew to give birth to their babies, and boys or girls, they let them all live. And when Pharaoh asked what happened, they say, the two midwives, well, your law is when you help the women of the Hebrew to deliver their baby. But, so to say, they phone to us saying, well, I feel the first signs of the deliverance. And when we arrive, they have already given birth to their babies. So we cannot apply the law. The law is if you help, but we have no time to help them. So they lie. They are misleading women, deceiving women, beguiling women. No, they are women who know what life is, and maybe from whom life comes. And we don't know in the text if they are this midwife Egyptian or is Hebrew or one Hebrew, one Egyptian. We don't know. In the Bible, the people who make people life are from the nation of God, and it's their best passports. And who cares from what country they come? And so it's very interesting, and I will end that, because all the first chapter of Exodus multiplies the allusion to the first chapter of Genesis, the book just before. You know, it is said that the Hebrew increased and multiplied and became fruitful, and it is said several times in this chapter, this refrain of Genesis 1. That means that the writers of Exodus 1 wants us to hear this text, Exodus 1, in the echo, in relation with Genesis 1, the people multiply, increase, and so on. And it's very interesting. If you read Exodus 1 with Genesis 1 in your mind, you will say, well, in Genesis 1, there is a creator, a God who gives life. In Exodus 1, there is no God. There is one allusion at the end of the chapter, but there is no creator. But in the place of God, you have the midwives, two women who give life, and it's a risky situation for them, who give life to the babies of the Hebrew women. And it's very interesting. The two chapters suggest that there is a God who gives life in the first chapter, but he has collaborators, and especially women. In Exodus 1, in the first chapter, we won't show you a God. We will show you women who are acting like God, in the name of God, who are giving birth, giving life to a nation, the Hebrews. And the two chapters, and it's very important theologically. I mean, the Creator is not only one single in the sky. He has collaborators on this earth who are working with him. And so these apparently misleading women who have said lies to Pharaoh are women who show something of the image and likeness of God, They help this Hebrew to be fruitful and to receive, in the name of God, the babies that were about to be thrown in the river. This afternoon, I will go on with some other texts of the beginning of biblical text, especially the book of Joshua 2, with this woman Rahab, the prostitute of Jericho, who is one of my personal friends. The beginning of 1 Samuel, with this character of Hannah, you know, who is the first human being in the Bible to announce the Messiah in his canticle. That all the story of Hannah is really the character, the main character of the beginning of the books of Samuel, is very interesting, because the books of Samuel are the books focused on the figure of the Messiah. And to have a Messiah, it's another topic that I will talk about during this week. To have a Messiah, you must have first women. No Messiah without women. And also, I would say one word about Proverb 1. Well, there is a strange woman, if we can say, who is wisdom, and she speaks of her own fruit. She says to people, don't eat the fruits that you produce by yourself. I have fruit coming from God for you, and it's much better. And I will say one word about the beginning of Matthew, with this scene of Joseph and Mary, and a word also about the beginning of Luke and Mary and her blessed fruit that we a little bit spoke about. Thank you.